One day, while traveling the road east from Megaton towards the Super Duper Mart, we see a road off to the west going up into a hillside. The road is in pieces. We see concrete broken and stacked all over the place, ruined and rusting cars partially blocking our way. But at the top of the hill, we see what appears to be a partial fence blocking the road up ahead. And out of this fence crawls a giant ant. Well, we can take care of this guy. Just then, we see a figure run from around the barricade. He's running straight for us. It's a young boy.
Those monsters, they're gonna get me.
Those what? What's the matter?
Those things. They keep coming. They scare me. Make it stop.
Calm down, kid.
No, those things will get me. I can't. I gotta keep going.
What the heck is your problem?
Those things, they're gonna get me too. Can't stop now.
Okay, kid. I'm gonna say this once. Stop your whining.
No, you don't care. The grown-ups never cared. Now they're all dead. Well, fine. You'll just die too.
Is that a warning or a threat?
See? I knew it. You don't care. No one ever cares. Well, fine. Go away. See if I care. But those things, they're gonna get you.
Unless you tell me what the problem is, I can't help you.
Those things. It's all their fault. They did this to us.
All right, I'm sorry. Calm down and tell me what's going on.
Please don't get mad at me. I'm scared. I don't know what to do. Just help me. Promise you'll help me.
Hey, calm down. It's going to be okay. I promise.
You won't leave me like all the other grown-ups. You can help me.
I don't know. You look like a tasty snack for a monster.
Why are you so mean? All you care about is yourself. Well, fine. My papa is missing, and I think the ants may have gotten him. I hope they get you too.
Sorry, kid. Help costs caps, and you look pretty broke to me.
You grown-ups are all the same. All you care about is your stuff. My papa is missing, and I think the ants may have gotten him. I hope they get you too.
I'd like to help, but I need to know more first.
Those big things. They're all over Grayditch, and they killed everyone. Please find my papa.
What happened here?
It used to be kinda nice. No one bothered us there. I guess because we were so close to DC. There were 7 of us living there in tall, old brick houses. I think I'm the last one left. Those things took everyone else.
Who else lived in Grayditch?
Besides me and my papa, there was Doc Lesko, who stayed with us, and Will Brandis and his mama and papa too. I guess they're all gone now.
Did you know the others in town very well?
Nah. People don't like to stay long in Grayditch. The DC ruins aren't a great place to make a home, you know. In fact, Papa was talking about moving on soon. We've been here for maybe a year.
Mind if I ask about some of the people who lived here?
Nah, go ahead. It's just nice to talk to anyone about stuff at all.
Tell me about this Doc Lesko.
He was a strange man. He paid Papa some caps to help him build a shack and carry a bunch of junk into it. Papa called him an egghead, but his head was shaped regular, so I didn't get it.
Where did Dr. Lesko stay?
He spent all of his time in that shack next door to my house. Every time I'd sneak in there, he'd be sitting at that funny-looking TV machine with the green words pushing buttons.
Do you have any idea what Dr. Lesko was doing in Grayditch?
Nah, he was a nice man, but he never wanted to play with me very much, and we barely talked. All I know is he was all gone when the ants started showing up. I think they got him too.
Did Dr. Lesko have any weird stuff in his place?
I don't know. All kinds of doohickeys. Boxes with lots of lights, some funny glass bottles. Oh wait, he had a big, clunky, shiny man too. That was kind of neat.
Tell me about the Brandis family.
Well, there is Will. He was sorta my friend. And then there was his dad and his mom.
Where did the Brandises live?
Right across the street, actually. It was pretty swell having someone to hang out with so close by.
So you and Will were good friends?
Yeah, Will was super nice to me. He was like a year older than me, I think. He even shared his comic books with me. We explored pretty much every bit of Grayditch we could find. I think that's why the ants don't bother me. I have good hiding spots.
How about Will's parents?
Well, his mom was nice too. She was kind of quiet, but she always took care of me and my papa when we came over. I think she was sad that my mom was gone. Will's dad was, well, I don't want to be mean, but he was kind of scary.
Will's dad was scary? How so?
He was like always watching me and my dad real careful, like he didn't trust us or something. He always kept staring at us from the windows of his house and typing stuff into his TV box. Will said his dad was like an old soldier or something, but he didn't like doing that stuff, so he quit.
Can you tell me more about the things attacking Grayditch?
Well, they're big, ugly things that crawl around on 6 legs. They got huge teeth and skitter around grabbing everything in their path. My papa would always say they're fucking ants. Well, that's what he used to call them anyway. I just call them fire ants.
Have they always been around?
Nah, those things started coming around only in the last few months. At first, they just crawled around outside our town. But later, they came into town, and, well, you know the rest.
Is there any special way to hurt them?
My papa had a gun. He said it hurt those things. But he said they were the dumbest fucking ants he ever saw. He kept telling everyone to shoot for their antenna. Whatever that means.
Oh, so that's where we learned to shoot them in the antenna. No wonder I missed that. Well, where's your house?
Look for the house nearest to the billboard. That's sticking out of the ground. It's pretty close to the diner. You can't miss it.
Okay, I'll go look for your father.
You will? Really? Thanks a whole lot. My house is the one closest to the huge sign and the old diner. Please, find my papa and make him come back.
Look, anything else you can do to help might save lives.
You know, maybe this will help and maybe it won't. But papa hid a bunch of stuff behind the old diner and a dumpster. He trusted me with the key and said it was for emergencies. But I bet he wouldn't mind you having it.
This probably isn't the best place for you to stand.
You think I didn't know that? I've been hiding in this place for days.
Is there anywhere else you can hide while I search?
Well, there is the personal shelter next to the old diner. Papa always said to stay away from it. But I guess it's supposed to be safe. I'll head over there and wait inside. Hurry back.
And with that, young Bryan Wilkes runs off, and we begin the quest, Those. Moving forward, we approach the barricade. Painted on the sign, we see, "Welcome to Grayditch." But the place doesn't look very welcoming. It is gray and deserted. The town of Grayditch was once a sprawling little suburb with large brick apartment complexes, but almost all of these are ruins. There are half a dozen or so of these big brick ruins, and we can explore them, but they're all empty. Not a single one has anything of interest. So we'll just explore the buildings that actually have something. The main road moving east and west eventually turns south, and we see that diner that Bryan was talking about, a Dot's Diner. That must mean turning left. Ah, there's that billboard. And the fallout shelter should be close by. We see it beneath the Dot's Diner sign.
It's kind of hard to breathe in this thing.
Oh, there he is. Let's see how he's doing.
Come on, tell me already.
Oh, I haven't found him yet. I'll keep looking.
Be careful, or those things might get you.
All right, we'll close that back on up. Gotta keep him safe. Heading inside the Dot's Diner, we don't really find anything back here. But before we can finish exploring, we get interrupted.
Ha! Stupid monsters. Can't get me in here.
What monsters? What are you talking? Oh, more ants. And they breathe fire? How can ants breathe fire? Back in the diner, we can loot a Nuka-Cola machine. Then turning east, we see the big billboard he was talking about, Nuka Break. And beneath it, we see what must be this Dr. Lesko's shack. But it's locked with a hard lock. We could pick this, but let's see if we can find an easier way inside. But then I remembered the dumpster Bryan talked about behind the Dot's Diner. Heading that way.
Is there any food in here?
Probably not, Bryan. Good luck in there. We find the dumpster resting against a bunch of rubble. And using Bryan's key, we can unlock the trash bin. Inside, we find a small store of ammunition, some frag grenades, and a rat-away. Moving back towards the billboard, we see a number of ruins across the street. As I said earlier, these are all empty. But next to this ruin, we find one closed door. This is the door to the Brandis' house. Heading inside, we don't see much activity. We can loot some bobby pins and booze from a cabinet in the living room. Heading under the stairs, we arrive at the bathroom. Nothing much in here but a first aid kit on the wall by the toilet. On the other side of the stairs is the kitchen. This is mostly empty, just a bunch of scrap. Though if we peer behind the refrigerator, we find a toolbox, and inside, a .32 caliber pistol with some ammunition. After looting some bottle caps on the kitchen table, we can take the stairs to the top floor. We arrive at the master bedroom. If the parents slept here, where did little Will sleep? Across from the bed is a desk, and on the desk is W. Brandis' terminal, locked with an easy lock. After hacking it, we find a number of entries, going all the way back to 2276. We'll start on June 17th, 2277. I can't believe I went through all that trouble to leave Navarro and make my way across the country just to get stuck in this crap hole. I'll be damned if I'm going to die here. Now that we're cut off from Lesko and Wilkes, I think we're on our own. The damn ants keep trying to find a way to get inside the house. Even as I'm typing this, I can hear them scraping the walls, looking for a way through. I don't know how much longer we can last. Wait, Navarro? Bryan told us that the Brandis father used to be a soldier, but he left because he didn't want to do it anymore. Did this guy abandon the Enclave? In the next one, April 2nd, 2277. Looks like we're going back in time here. I'm going to have to find a better way to protect Sheila and Will from those ants. Ever since Lesko came to town, I'm certain they're getting more and more aggressive. Wasteland ants are bad enough, but at least you could run away from them. These would seem to pursue you to the ends of the earth if they could. Call me crazy, but I swear I saw one start a fire the other day. I don't know how this could be happening. I've decided to dig up my old sidearm and keep it hidden on me at all times. If those things get too close, I'll blast the antennae right off their ugly heads. Next, February 24th, 2277. These ants are becoming a real pain in the ass, so much so that I had to take a trip to Megaton and buy a better gun to protect my family. It cost me a small fortune. I had to trade every bit of ant meat I had collected, but it was worth it. I'm teaching Frank and Sheila to use it just in case something happens to me. If one of you two are reading this and I'm gone, I keep the gun in the kitchen behind the old fridge. Okay, so his wife's name was Sheila, but I thought his son's name was Will. Here he names him Frank. But earlier he called him Will, and Bryan called him Will. Looks like we got some confusion going on here. In the last one, we read that he took his gun with him, though we did find a revolver in the toolbox behind the fridge. Perhaps he had two weapons. In the next one, November 15th, 2276, some scientist named Lesko moved in with the Wilkes family across the street. They are helping him make some sort of structure on the old lot near the diner. Lesko offered to pay me caps if I helped, but I declined. I don't know who he's working for, but I don't think they're still looking for me. Our supplies are running low, and I need to begin foraging for food and some better drinking water. I'd have an easier time if it wasn't for the damn ants. I swear they have a nest around here somewhere. So he was being pursued. Pursued by people from Navarro, maybe? In the next one, October 30th, 2276, I was scavenging some of the nearby buildings for junk to sell and came across a working radio. No sooner did I turn it on than I heard the familiar patriotic anthems they used to play whenever Richardson would give a speech. But this was different. Who the hell is President Eden? When did that happen? Are they on this coast too? Most importantly, will they come looking for me? I hope this journey wasn't a huge mistake. And that confirms it. He is former Enclave, and he must not be aware that the Enclave in Navarro fell. That means it must have taken him a long time to travel across the country. And in his final one, October 2nd, 2276. I've finally found a quiet place for my family. We've been running from one settlement to the next, just trying to keep out of sight. Now that I'm on the other coast, I feel much safer. The family across the way from us seems pretty decent. Their kid Bryan likes to play with my son, which is great. It's hard for Will to make friends because we haven't stayed in one place long enough. Maybe we can finally put down some roots here in Grayditch. Okay, so now his son's name is Will again. This guy just can't figure out what to name his son. Well, I wonder what happened to him. We didn't find their bodies in this house. Beside the desk, we find a frag grenade. There's a footlocker in the corner of the room, but it's locked, and we don't have the key. That's it for the Brandis home. Moving downstairs, we can head out and back to the street. Bryan said that his home, the Wilkins home, was across the street from the Brandis home. Moving that way, sure enough, we find a house right next to Lesko Shack, and inside we find a dead ant. And moving into the living room, oh no, it's Fred Wilkes. On his corpse is the shack key. Well, we learned from the Brandis terminal that the Wilkes did help Lesko erect the shack, so I suppose it makes sense that he would have the shack key. It's clear from the number of ant corpses all over the place that these ants killed Fred. In the northeastern corner, we find an ammo canister. There's an assault rifle and ammunition on a bookshelf. Heading into the kitchen, we don't find anything, just scrap and tin cans. Heading into the bathroom on the other side of the stairs, we find a first aid kit against the wall. Then heading upstairs, we find the family bedroom. A bed for Fred and for young Bryan. There's an ammunition box on the ground next to a bookshelf. Behind the master bed, there's a .32 caliber pistol and ammunition on the shelf. And next to Bryan's bed, we find a teddy bear. Well, he left this behind, so I'm sure he doesn't need it anymore. We'll snag this for little Marie. Heading back downstairs, we see 2 metal boxes we missed, and one we find a pre-war book that we can hand in to Scribe Yearling, and that's it for the Wilkes home. Well, looks like we've got some sad news to deliver. But before we do, now that we have the key, let's check out Lesko Shack. Perhaps it can answer some of our questions. Inside, we find a bit of a science lab. Turning left, we see a holotape on a table, Dr. Lesko's password recording. Examining it in our Pip-Boy.
This could be the 5th time I've forgotten the code to my desktop terminal. I really must learn to be more organized. The password for my terminal is Formicidae. How hard could that be for me to remember? Note to self, destroy this holotape as soon as move to new lab is complete.
Well, great. Okay, so he's one of those scatterbrained scientists. And here we get our first clue. Formicidae is the family scientific name for ants. Is Dr. Lesko somehow connected to the giant ants in town? We see chemistry equipment on a table. And on his desk, we find Dr. Lesko's terminal. With the password we just got, we have direct access to it. No need to hack it. Dr. Weston Lesko, private. Please do not access without permission. We find 3 entries. And the first one, we can activate the science robot, but nothing happens. Error pod empty. This must be the shiny man Bryan was talking about. Next, we see science robot command input. Error robot out of range. So we can't do anything here. And finally, we've got personal notes. Here we find 3 entries. In the first, where did I go wrong? Batch A27 is a complete failure. I must return to my original formulas and begin the process all over again. Perhaps the pressure of working in these conditions without proper laboratory equipment is to blame. Perhaps I simply didn't splice the correct genetic instructions. Or perhaps I am fatigued. Whatever the case may be, A27 is proving to be a disaster. I must introduce a new formula soon, or I may not be alive to see my hypothesis come to fruition. In the next one, sample location discovered. I found the perfect specimen for my experiments inside Marigold Station. I've set up shop underground for now while I prepare the experiment. All I need is a bit of last-minute programming on my robot, and it'll be ready to perform the delicate injections. Soon I will prove to everyone that my formula is a viable alternative to the destruction of these misunderstood beings. So Lesko was performing genetic research on these ants, and according to this entry, it looks like their colony may be in the nearby Marigold Station. In the final one, dangers. I realize the dangers involved in tampering with nature. I've heard the rhetoric and hoopla about playing God. However, I am determined to reduce these poor things back to their original state when they were harmless. Only through genetic recoding is this possible. All that is needed is a proper test subject. My search continues as I tweak the formula. And it's exactly as we feared. Dr. Lesko must be responsible for the ants having attacked and destroyed Grayditch. We see a Protectron charging pod nearby. Looks like his robot is a Protectron. I wonder if we'll find it deeper in. After looting some darts from a box, we can head outside and move to the Pulowski Preservation Shelter to tell poor Bryan about his dad.
Hey, you're back. Any word? Any news? Come on, tell me already.
I think I have some bad news for you.
Oh no. What happened?
Sorry, kid. Your old man is ant food.
You know what you are? You're a big asshole. That's right, an asshole. My papa said never to say that word, but you deserve it. Now what am I going to do? My papa's dead. Poor papa.
Bryan has the same response here to the top two options, so we'll say, Bryan, I'm sorry, but your father's dead.
He's dead? I guess I already knew. Besides, I'm too tired to cry anymore.
People die all the time out here. Get used to it.
Why does everyone who comes through here have to be so mean? We have to get back at these things for killing my papa. We just gotta.
My part in this is all done. Sorry, kid.
Please don't go, please. We have to get back at these things for killing my papa. We just gotta.
Why don't you just forget about it and clear on out of here?
Look, my dad used to always say, you can do whatever you want in life, but the family comes first. If I left now, I'd just be running away. I can't do that. I owe him.
Fine. I'll take care of everything.
You gotta stop it, so this can't happen to anyone else's family ever again. I wish I had met you a long time ago. Then maybe my dad would still be alive.
I'll stop whatever started this. I promise you.
Thanks for doing all this. I'm feeling better now that you're here.
I have to go now.
If you look around enough in Grayditch, you might find some useful stuff people left behind.
Useful stuff, hey? Well, I think that's exactly what I'll do. After spending a good deal of time searching these ruins and coming up empty-handed, we find an abandoned house a few houses down from the Brandis house. Inside, we can loot some mentats on a shelf in the entryway. Moving into the bathroom, we find a first aid kit on the wall by the toilet. Then, moving back into the living room, we find a copy of Guns and Bullets in a wooden box on a bookshelf, a 10mm pistol on the bookshelf, and then an ammunition box on the other side of the bookshelf. Moving to the kitchen, here we find a pot at the bottom of a shelf with some buff out inside. Then moving upstairs, we can loot some bobby pins and alcohol from a cabinet. And beneath the bed, we find a box filled with pre-war money, some jet, and some Med-X. That's it for this abandoned house. Moving out, we can continue to explore. And as we explore, we encounter many more ants. On the southern side of town, within the row of apartment complexes, on the other side of the alley behind the Brandis home, we find another abandoned house, right between two ruins. Moving inside, we find some Psycho on a bookshelf beneath a ham radio in the living room. Moving to the bathroom, oh, no first aid kit here, okay. There's a hunting rifle leaning against a bookshelf in the living room. The kitchen is empty, so moving upstairs to the master bedroom, we find a scoped .44 Magnum and ammunition in a cabinet and a first aid kit on a desk. That's it for this abandoned house. We've almost explored everything. Going over every nook and cranny in Grayditch, we can get rid of even more ants. On the southwestern side of the town, we see a rather grand structure with big columns that looks unlike every other building in town. Moving that way, we pass another sign, "Welcome to Grayditch," on a brick wall, and we find the entrance to the Marigold Station. But before we can head down, we can get rid of even more ants. When done, we can head back to the entrance to Marigold Station and explore inside. Inside, the station is dark, and we immediately find more ants. Turning around, we can loot a Nuka-Cola machine that we missed upon entry. Then moving east, we can round a corner where we find another ant. Here we see a door to the left leading to an employees only area. Opening it up, we see a bunch of pipes and more ants. We see a row of shelves against the eastern wall. The boxes are mostly empty, but we do find an easy locked ammo box here and a mine box on the top of the shelf. From here, we see a path going down to the east. At this point, I didn't want to get all turned around. I didn't know where this went, so I backed out of this room and turned south to move down to the main terminal. At the top of the ramp, peering down, we see another ant. And at the bottom of the ramp, we find another ant. In the middle of this mezzanine level, we see a ticket booth. Inside the ticket booth, we find a skeleton clutching a .32 caliber revolver with ammunition on the ground and a holotape lying next to him, Grady's last recording. This starts an unmarked side quest called Grady's Package, which I covered in my video on Lugnut and Lagbolt that you can watch here, so we'll skip this for now. Heading out of the ticket booth, we can take the escalator down to the tracks. The tunnels to the west are all filled in with rubble. We can't get back there, but we do find two tunnels to the east. One leading westbound to Falls Church and the other unmarked. Going down the unmarked tunnel for now, we find an ant. And at the end, we see a door to the right leading to another employees-only area. Now, before we take any side passages, I wanted to finish exploring this tube. Rounding a corner, we find an ant. The ant was guarding a gated-off vending machine station. There's an easy-locked ammo canister on the ground, a Nuka-Cola machine filled with bottle caps of Nuka-Cola, a silenced 10mm pistol, and ammunition on some lockers, next to a sledgehammer on the ground. There's a skeleton on the ground holding more ammunition and another scoped .44 Magnum revolver. And continuing north leads us to the westbound tracks, the blue line. Looks like this travels east to Falls Church and west back towards the Marigold Station. I wanted to complete the loop, so I headed west for now, and here we find another employee area. Well, since this finishes the loop, might as well explore this employee area. Heading up the stairs, we find some ants. Against the southern wall in this room, we find a number of boxes and containers. There's a motorcycle blade inside one of these boxes, an ammo canister at the top of the shelf next to some railway spikes, a first aid kit on a countertop nearby, and some sensor modules in a toolbox. We can save these for Scribe Rothschild. Against the eastern wall, we find more lockers and some frag grenades sitting in one of these lockers. Then turning around, we find a hallway connecting to the north. This rounds a corner and brings us up some stairs. We arrive back in that pipe-filled room with the ammo canisters and the ants that we explored above the mezzanine. So we've come full circle. That leaves only two paths left to go. Going back down to the mezzanine level, then taking the escalator all the way back down to the tracks, we can again take the unmarked tube all the way to the end, and this time, turn right to go through the employees-only door. The hallway twists and turns and goes down some stairs. It leads to a room where we find even more ants. Looks like there's a gas in this room. Heading up the stairs for safety, we can ignite it. There we go. Safe and sound now. There's a door against the eastern wall of this room. Inside, we find Grady's fire hose box against the eastern wall, where we can find Grady's safe key, which is part of the unmarked quest I talked about earlier. There's an ammunition box at the bottom of this shelf, some jet directly above it. Turning around, we find Psycho and a stim pack on a shelf, and a toolbox on the bottom of the shelf. To leave this room, we go out the southwestern doorway. This leads to a hallway, and at the end of the hallway, a staircase going down. We saw an ant at the top of the stairs creeping forward, and peering down the stairs, we can take him out. At the bottom of the stairs, we round a corner to enter another large room. The room appears to be empty until we look south, where we find another ant. The boxes are mostly empty. In one, we find some railway spikes. To leave this room, we go out a doorway to the south. The path to the right is blocked off, and so to continue, we have to go east. This leads down to another train track. It continues to the north, but the southern end is all blocked in with rubble. Creeping forward, we see another employees-only access door to the right. Heading up the stairs and opening the door.
You startled me. You really mustn't creep up on people like that.
Yeesh, creep up on you? I just crapped my pants, for crying out loud.
That's no way to talk to a man of science. I don't have time for this kind of childish nonsense. I have some very delicate experiments that I must attend to.
Hey, you're that egghead, scientist the kid was talking about.
Well, yes, I suppose I am. Dr. Weston Lesko's my name, and it's good to make your acquaintance. What brings you to my little experimental ecosystem?
Sorry, I didn't expect to bump into anyone alive down here.
That is precisely why this is the ideal place for my work. Do you realize you're trampling about in a delicately balanced and highly sensitive experimentation area?
What the hell are you doing down here?
Well, I might ask you the same thing. You're trampling about in a delicately balanced and highly sensitive experimental area.
How about we start the experiment by decorating that wall with your brains?
Oh my, such rude behavior. I'll have none of this from you. I have far more important things to do. Oh, goodness me, that rhymed. How marvelous.
You call this a laboratory?
I've chosen this room as a temporary retreat from which to contemplate my erroneous figures for my experiments. It may be a bit dark and damp, but such annoyances will not stand in the way of science.
Experiments? What do you mean?
My experiments are of a complex nature and would take a scientist to explain. Oh wait, I'm a scientist. How marvelous. My foray into reducing the girth of these insectoid creatures is of utmost importance. I intend to generationally reduce their immense stature by way of a pre-birth induced mutagen. Isn't that clever?
Okay, now how about explaining that for the slower people?
Well, let me see. Well, you start with a generation of very large ants. You simply inject the current brood's eggs with an engineered mutagen. Then the next generation should be smaller. Do it enough times, and you may be able to reduce them back to their once original tiny size.
Slow down, Professor. Once more, in English, okay?
It's always staggering just how low the intellectual level of the typical wastelander appears to be. Let me try and explain. The ants are very, very big. I want to make them very, very small. So I put a special medicine in the eggs to make them small after they hatch.
Okay. Enough with the mumbo-jumbo.
Yes, it's fairly obvious you have no clue what I'm dealing with here. Let me explain to you as I would to a child. The ants start out very, very big. Then we put the magic potion in the eggs, so when they hatch, the new ones will be smaller. Do that many, many times, and soon all the ants are tiny again. How marvelous!
Or we can pass an intelligence check to say, oh, I see. You're trying to make them smaller over time by injecting the eggs.
My word, you understand perfectly. How marvelous!
I've got news for you, Brainiac. It ain't working.
I don't expect a common wastelander to understand the intricacies of an experiment this delicate.
Are you aware that your new ants breathe fire?
Well, this is rather embarrassing, so you'll have to forgive me, but it appears that I've made a slight miscalculation in my mutagen samples.
So what's gone wrong?
Well, I'm afraid I made slight miscalculations in the mutagen. Instead of lowering their size, the brood hatched with a new biomechanism. I call their genetic aberration pyrosis. the ability to emit flame from their bodies. I may be able to correct this error, but I can't get near my equipment.
An error? People have died, Lesko!
A small price to pay for the advancement of science. A few die, and later, after the mutagen is improved, many more will live. That's the way it's done. The only way to correct this mistake is to modify the mutagen. I must get to my terminal.
Ha! You call yourself a scientist? That's rich.
There's no need to be rude. Science must learn to crawl before it walks. If you're not interested in helping the situation, then I suggest you let me get back to perfecting my mutagen.
We can pass an intelligence check to say, I'm shocked you didn't attempt this in a controlled environment first.
Your knowledge of experimental procedure surprises me. Indeed, I have skipped a step and directly modified an entire brood. Perhaps I was too hasty. I was so certain it would work. To correct this mistake, I'll need to get to my terminal to modify the mutagen.
So all that needs to be done is eliminate the remaining ants?
I'm afraid it's not that simple. The mutagen has already been injected into the Ant Queen. She has enough in her body to last for years. My problem right now is I can't reach my terminal to make the proper adjustments and repair the damage I've caused.
So? It's your mistake, Doc. You fix it.
Please, don't insult my intelligence. Had I been able to correct this error easily, I would have done so long before you arrived.
He has the same response to these top two options, so we'll say, what can I do to help?
Since you've offered, allow me to elaborate. My portable terminal is set up in the Hatchery chamber near the Ant Queen. If I can reach it, I can continue to work on improving the mutagen.
He has the same response to all three of these options, so we'll say, why not just kill the Queen and be done with it?
If I were to do that, months of data would be lost. No, the Queen must remain completely unharmed. Your objective would be to eliminate what I call her quintet of nest guardians. Filthy little abominations.
And he has the same response to all three of these options, so we'll say, just how will all of this undo the mayhem you've caused?
I've rigged the equipment at my portable terminal to emit what I call an inhibitor pulse. Once I send this pulse, all of the remaining ants will lose their empathic link with the Queen and frenzy, destroying each other in the process. So, that's all there is to it. What do you say?
You want help? Fork over some caps, Einstein.
Why can't man follow the ants' example? They work together as a team, every waking moment dedicated to the colony. They require no wealth or material items. Everything they need is provided for them by their fellow insects. But I digress. If it's payment you need, all I can offer is one of my Mutagenic Bio Enhancers.
Mutagenic Bio what?
I've managed to isolate some of the fire ant genes and distill them into human-safe genetic enhancers. I can inject you with one of these formulas and you'll find yourself with either enhanced strength or enhanced perception. Not only that, but you'll be somewhat more resistant to fire. How marvelous!
This is a hefty task, Doc. I'm gonna need some serious incentive.
Yes, I suppose you're right. Science must learn to acquiesce to your standards in order to advance itself. I was merely going to offer up one of my Mutagenic Bio Enhancers, but I suppose I could up the ante. I will also award you with my old lab coat. It served me well over the years, and you may find it useful for your own experiments.
If it'll stop the ants from burning down Grayditch, I'm in.
You will? How marvelous! Be careful, my friend. The nest guardians can be quite tenacious.
We could try to fool this guy and get away with as little work as possible by saying, oh, my work is done, Doctor.
Please don't insult my intelligence. You didn't even enter the hatchery. Now, I believe you have a job to do?
What can you tell me about the fire ants?
Well, the mutagen has enhanced their fortitude and provided them with what I call pyrosis, the ability to emit flame biologically. They're quite radiation-free, however. Well, as radiation-free as any other mutated creature in the wasteland.
How did you go from changing their size to breathing fire?
Playing with genetic codes isn't simple. Do you realize one tiny tweak at any point in the last 1,000,000 years could have completely changed us? Going from attempting to change their size to generating their pyrosis ability is no surprise at all.
Will anything special hurt the ants?
I'm afraid they are not susceptible to anything I can think of that wouldn't harm the garden variety giant ant. Just aim for their antennae if you can. It will confuse them quite a bit.
How the heck can an ant breathe fire?
The stimulation of the subject's evolutionary trigger by the mutagen caused a biodefensive reaction metamorphosing the ant's venom glands. This process caused unexpected oscillations in the venom molecules at such a vast rate it produces a thermodynamic biochemical reaction. As the subject ejects the volatile solution, it becomes conflagrant due to new structures in its maw. I call its calefaction array. Amazing, isn't it?
What do you know about Bryan Wilkes?
Far too curious. His incessant questioning would often come when I was the most absorbed with my calculations. He had no regard for the importance of my work.
You should have at least told him you were alive. He thought he was alone.
I can't risk leaving this place. I have to continue monitoring the hatchery for any further mutations in the next brood. I have no time for children and their petty games. What do they know about the importance of my work?
Don't you realize you've ruined his entire life?
You have your ideals and I have mine. I'm down here to complete my experiments at any cost. If that means the loss of a few lives to save generations of lives in the future, it's a small price to pay.
Can't you take responsibility for his father's death?
All scientists take responsibility for their failures because it comes with the territory. I will take this experimentation to completion without roosting on the moral high ground. If I allow emotions to enter the mix, all this time and energy spent will have been for nothing.
About your experiments.
Oh my, yes, they're quite marvelous. There are many that say it can't be done, but I'll prove them wrong.
What's the goal of your experiments?
By introducing my mutagen directly into an ant egg, I hope to reduce the size of the adults. This is a generational system, meaning it will take quite a few broods before the ants are at their destination size. In the end, I hope to make them as small as they were over 200 years ago.
How exactly can I destroy the mutagen?
Destroy? Oh, no! You mustn't do that. It's my life's work. Just clear me a path to my equipment and I'll do the rest when you tell me it's safe.
We can pass a science check to say something isn't right. You shouldn't have gotten results like these so quickly.
Well, I may have used a few, shortcuts, yes. I was told that the FEV works wonders when used under controlled circumstances. Apparently, I was wrong, but I know my mistake. I'm certain I can get it to work.
What? His mutagen is FEV? How did Dr. Lesko get his hands on FEV? I have to go now.
Much to do, so much to do.
Wow, that's a pretty important virus that he has on hand here in the bowels of the Marigold Station. But now we know why those ants can breathe fire. FEV can do anything. Turning around, we find an ammunition box that we can loot. Doc Lesko doesn't seem to mind. We can take all of this. There's another one at the bottom of the next shelf, and a first aid kit on the middle shelf. Turning around, on one of his tables, we find Dr. Lesko's terminal. It's locked with an average lock, and it's owned. We lose karma by hacking it. Once he steps away, we can hack it anyway. Inside, we find the same personal notes that we read in his shack in Grayditch. But we find one new entry here, Unlock Hatchery Access Door, which appears to have no function. This is actually useful for if we chose to kill Dr. Lesko. On his body, we find Lesko's portable terminal access. If we turn around to open the hatch access door behind him, we see that it's locked and requires a key. We can then use the access code from his inventory to access the terminal and unlock the hatchery access door. But if we agreed to his quest, he unlocks it for us, making this option unnecessary. We see his bed in a southern nook. There's an easy-locked ammo canister on the ground and another 10mm pistol on the shelf beside him. Then, after looting some darts in a box on a shelf to the east and a Nuka-Cola in another box, we can open the access door. This brings us down to another track. Here we find a bunch of steam or smoke pouring out of a hole in the track. We can hop down, and at the bottom of the hole to the south, we find a door to the Queen Ants' Hatchery. We arrive in a cavern lit with glowing fungus. There's a traffic cone on the ground, but nothing hiding beneath it. Moving forward, the tunnel turns right, and at the end of the tunnel, near to a construction light, we find one of the 5 fire ant nest guardians. One down, 4 to go. Continuing forward, we find a pile of refuse on the ground. This is an ant refuse pile, and it acts like a container. Inside, we'll find ant nectar, among other things. There's another refuse pile against the northern wall with more ant nectar inside. Continuing north, we find another refuse pile, this one with ammunition inside. Then, next to the construction light, we find another refuse pile. This one has even more ant nectar. The tunnel then turns north and brings us by yet another construction light and traffic cone. We see movement down the hill. Sure enough, another fire ant nest guardian. 2 down, 3 to go. Down the slope and rounding the corner, we pass by another construction light, more glowing fungus, until we find a slope going down with 2 nest guardians. We can use the opportunity to try the antenna trick, see if it really does turn them against each other. Look at that. They do spew fire, and blasting the antenna works. But, wow, this is gonna take a long time. Let's, speed things up a bit. Four down, 1 to go. Moving down the slope and turning right, we see a Protectron. This must be the science robot that Lesko told us about. He's walking in a cave, and in the cave we find the Marigold Ant Queen. But we still have 1 nest guardian to kill, and we don't see him inside that cave, but this tunnel continues north. Moving north, it rounds a corner. Going under a large rocky beam, at the end of the tunnel, we find the last nest guardian. With that, we complete Lesko's request. But we have a number of options here. At the end of this tunnel, we see a bunch of stone pillars blocking off access to the Queen's cave. I suppose we could snipe at her from here. But moving back around to the main entrance of the cave, we'll see what options we have. Heading into her cave, we see a terminal on a table. It's locked with an average lock. After hacking it, we find 3 options. We can send the inhibitor pulse. Remember, this inhibitor pulse causes all living ants to frenzy. This could have been used to make the nest guardians attack each other, but since we've already killed them, it's pretty much useless to us. Activating it now doesn't really do anything. With the nest guardians dead, we can retrace our steps and head back to Lesko's lab to check in with him.
I've detected some changes within the Queen's hatchery with my equipment. What's transpired?
My work is done, Doctor.
Oh, how marvelous. Please, tell me what happened. Come now, the faster you tell me, the faster I can provide promised payment for your services.
I've killed all the nest guardians.
Then I will proceed to my portable terminal at once and make the necessary changes to the formula. Thanks very much for everything. You've been quite a useful lab assistant.
With that, we complete the quest and get the reward. We'll cover the rewards in a moment. Another option is to access the terminal and this time destroy the mutagen sample. We gain karma, for after all, we are destroying FEV. Heading all the way back to Lesko's lab, we can say, I've killed all the nest guardians, but I destroyed your mutagen supply.
What? How could you do such a foolish thing?
He has the same response for both of the bottom 2 options, so we'll say, I can't let you risk people's lives for an experiment.
You utter buffoon! You've set my work back months, perhaps even years. I'm afraid I have no further use of your services, and any bargain we may have had is null and void. And now, if you'll excuse me...
If we choose either of those 2 options, we complete the quest, but we don't get any rewards. Or we can pass a science check to say, your theories were in error and beyond correction. I had no choice.
Spoken like a true disciple of science. I will restart my calculations from the beginning and learn to crawl before I try to run. I suppose I shouldn't be angered by your actions. Forgive my impertinence.
By choosing this option, we can destroy the mutagen sample but still get the quest reward. I'll cover the speech option in just a second. The final option is to do everything. Send the inhibitor pulse, destroy the mutagen sample, synthesize a new mutagen formula, which doesn't do anything, it requires a master cipher sequence, and then destroy the Ant Queen. Oh no, I killed the robot! I didn't want to kill the science robot, he didn't harm nobody. Let's try this again, but this time we'll wait for the science robot to walk out of harm's way. Funny that the Ant Queen doesn't turn hostile to the robot. This is, after all, the robot Lesko uses to inject the Ant Queen with the mutagen. When the robot's safe, we can kill the Queen. And we also gained karma. On the Queen's body, we find some Ant Queen Pheromones. This item is useful for completing an unmarked quest in Rivet City, which I covered in part 3 of my series on Rivet City, Forbidden Love on a Tub, that you can watch here. We find more refuse piles in the den and a number of egg clutches, but the egg clutches are all empty. Heading to the table, we find some 10mm rounds beneath the table, a big book of science lying on top of it, some more 10mm rounds lying next to a Brahman skull, but these have a tendency to clip through the floor, and I couldn't loot them, and a Nuka-Cola Quantum next to the mutagen sample. With the Queen killed, we can head back to Lesko. I've killed the Ant Queen.
What? How could you do such a thing?
And now we can pass that speech check. It was for the greater good, Lesko. Man is not ready to play God.
Perhaps man isn't ready, my friend. Not today, but maybe someday. I suppose I shouldn't be angered by your actions. Forgive my impertinence.
And this way, or by passing the science check, we can kill the Queen and destroy the mutagen sample and still get the reward. So what will you do now, Doctor?
Well, I will continue my research. There has to be a way to reduce these creatures to their former size. Until then, I will be staying in my shack next to the Wilkes' home should you ever wish to visit me.
What should I do about Bryan Wilkes?
You should take him away from this place. Find him a home. It would be difficult to accomplish my experiments with him scampering about and asking an interminable amount of questions.
Yikes. All heart, this guy. Well, I'm ready for my Mutagenic Bio Enhancer injection and lab coat, Doctor.
How marvelous. Here is the promised lab coat. I'm certain you'll find it quite useful. Which injection did you want? Will it be the Ant Sight or Ant Might?
I'd like the Ant Might.
How marvelous. Ant Might it is. Hold still, please.
With that, he pulls out a syringe and injects us. Ant Might perk added. You've been granted the strength and flame resistance of the Grayditch fire ants. Your strength has increased by 1, and you are now 25% resistant to fire. This is a great perk to take later on during our gameplay, because using it in combination with the perk Almost Perfect is one way to get a perfect 10 in strength. Or we can tell him that we'd like the Ant Sight to increase our perception. He gives us the injection, and then we get the perk. You've been granted the perception and flame resistance of the Grayditch fire ants. Your perception has increased by 1, and you are now 25% resistant to fire. And again, it's useful to save this for later, as it's a great way to get our perception to a perfect 10. Examining the lab coat that we got from Lesko in our inventory, we see that it grants plus 20 to radiation resistance and plus 10 to science, and has a DR of 4. We only get this coat if we asked Lesko for a serious incentive in our dialogue tree. Otherwise, he just gives us the perk. This plus 10 to science is unique in being the highest amount of science granted by any article of clothing in the entire game. We can repair it with any other scientist outfit or lab coat. Despite saying that he's going back to his shack in Grayditch, he actually turns around and goes right back down into the Queen Den. If we follow him, and if we left the Queen alive, he walks right into the cave, and the Queen immediately attacks, causing him to turn tail and flee. It's a strange response, because this is exactly what he asked for. He wanted us to only kill the Guardians, but to leave the Queen alive. But if we do so, he just turns around and runs away. Well, we've resolved the issue with the fire ants here in Grayditch. Now we've got to find a new home for young Bryan Wilkes. But first, we've got to find a way out of this station. Heading west out the door back down to the tracks, we can turn north. At the end of the tracks and rounding a corner, we can kill more ants. Moving into this passage, we see a gated-off area to the left, and lying dead on the ground is the body of William Brandis. It's our Enclave deserter. He's dead. But what happened to his wife and child? We can only hope that somehow they made it. On his body, we find some ant nectar, biker goggles, energy cells, a laser pistol, that must be the weapon that he bought from Megaton, and William Brandis's key. This must be for that locked footlocker we found in his house. Turning around, against the opposite wall, we find some shelves and containers. On the bottom of the middle shelf is a mine box with frag mines inside. Then continuing east, we arrive at another train tracks. The path is blocked to the south, but it continues to the north. Moving that way, we see a moving light partway through the tunnel. Turning right at the light, we find another door to an employees-only area. We can access it by hacking the easy-locked terminal against the nearby wall, or by picking the door. Inside and on the ground, we find Grady's safe, which we can unlock using Grady's key that we found in that fire hose container. This is again part of that unmarked quest, Grady's package, that I covered in my video. In that video, I talk about the naughty nightwear we get in this safe. We can then loot an ammo canister on top of the safe, a ripper on a shelf, a first aid kit on the bottom shelf, an ammunition canister on the top shelf, and another one on a shelf against the northwestern wall. As we leave, Lugnut runs up. He is part of that unmarked quest that I already covered, so I'll skip his dialogue here. Heading out and moving north up the tracks, we can take them all the way to the end. We see that it goes off to the north, but then ends at a gate to the east. Inspecting our local map, we find ourselves back at the blue line. So going west goes back to Marigold Station, and going east heads to Falls Church. Well, going east for now, to make sure we got all loot, we can move into a northern door and turn right to open a door to Falls Church. Falls Church is an interesting area with an unmarked quest of its own. I covered Falls Church in detail in my video that you can watch here. But we've got a quest to complete, so turning around and heading back into the Marigold Station, we can again go back to the blue line and take it all the way to the end. Oh, looks like an ant respawned. Oh, and he's still spewing fire. Yeah, it's overkill, I don't care. At the end of the blue line, we arrive back at Marigold Station. We can take the escalator back up to the mezzanine platform, and then move north through the station and out the door back to Grayditch. Before heading back to Bryan Wilkes, we can move back to the Brandis home to see what was inside that footlocker. Moving into the bedroom, we can use the key to open the footlocker, and inside, we find a missile launcher and some missiles. Pretty heavily armed for a mere Wastelander. But being an Enclave remnant, this makes a lot more sense. Heading outside, Lesko told us he was going to return to his shack. Let's see if he's home yet. Moving into the shack. No, he's not home yet. Okay, looks like he's taking his good sweet time. Back in Grayditch, we can move to the Pulowski Preservation Shelter to check in with Bryan.
What's this funny suction hose for?
Oh, Bryan, you don't want to know. Just, don't put your mouth on it.
The ants! They're all dead! Every single one of them. It was so weird. All of a sudden, the ants went nuts and started fighting each other. It was like they were totally crazy. It was really scary, but kind of cool at the same time. You know what I mean?
He has the same response to all three of these options, so we'll say, I'm just glad you're safe.
I wish I had something to give you for all the work you did, but I never really had much to start with. I guess now you'll be on your way, and I'll have to try living here by myself. Hope you'll come back and visit someday.
Yeah, you'll be better off staying at home.
I don't know. I kinda don't like it in here. Gonna be really lonely. I guess this is goodbye then. Come back and visit me.
With that, we complete the quest, Those. He said that he didn't like it in here, giving us the impression that he was going to stay in his preservation shelter, but instead he turns around and walks back to his house. If we follow him, he heads inside, and he hangs out by the corpse of an ant. Oh, and his dead father, and a fire. You gonna take care of that, Bryan? Nope, he's just gonna sit there and drink Nuka-Cola.
Checking up on me or something?
So how are you getting along now that the ants are gone?
It's lonely. No one really comes by here. Plus, this place keeps reminding me of my papa. I mean, you're the only person who's come back through Grayditch since everything happened. Dr. Lesko is next door now, but he's so buried in his work. We barely have time to talk. At least, I'm safer in my old house now. I suppose I have you to thank for that.
And here he stays for the rest of the game, with the body of his dad. If we end the quest like this, Three Dog comes on the radio and says the following.
This, faithful listeners, is the story of a little boy. A little boy named Bryan Wilkes. You see, Bryan's from Grayditch, a small settlement that was recently overrun with overzealous giant ants. Bryan, sadly, was the sole survivor. That's where the kid from Vault 101 comes in, and where our story, unfortunately, gets even worse. You see, Mr. Vault 101 may have stopped the ant problem, but he couldn't be bothered to help poor little Bryan. No. But what did he do with the boy, Three Dog? Where's Bryan Wilkes now? I'll tell you where Bryan Wilkes is. That little boy is stuck in a fucking box, that's where. Good God, 101. Have you no conscience? You left the kid to rot in that fallout shelter. I have witnesses. So, for the love of God, if someone is in the vicinity of Grayditch, could you please give the kid a Nuka-Cola, a Salisbury steak, something?
Heading back to Lesko's shack, it took him a while, but he finally arrived. Hey, there's his science bot in the charging dock, and we find Lesko sitting in his chair.
Back again, are we? How marvelous! Your arrival is most unexpected, but not entirely unwelcome.
Why are there fire ants still down in the metro tunnels?
I'm afraid that's my fault. The last mutagen sample was given to the Ant Queen's entire brood. The brood consists of hundreds of larvae. I'm afraid that after they hatched, some escaped through the nooks and crannies in the tunnels. The fire ants you are seeing now are merely the remnants of the brood returning to the nest.
So what are you going to do now about your experiments?
Well, I'm uncertain. This does deal quite a blow to my research. First, however, I must stay here and devote all of my resources to finding the proper mutagen formula.
I have to go now.
Now, was it 5 parts per milliliter or was it 6?
But this is only one way to complete the quest. Instead of telling Bryan to go back to his home, we can say, I can't leave you here alone. Let me find you a place to live.
Really? You mean it? Oh boy, thank you so much. I'll wait in my old house for you to come back. I need to bury my papa anyway. Just don't forget about me.
Actually, I give up. I can't find anywhere that'll take you in.
Okay. I understand. Thanks for trying, though. Don't worry about me. I'll be okay here. Now that the fire ants are long gone, maybe people will begin showing up here again. Stop by again someday and say hi, okay?
And with that, he walks back to his family's home, and we complete the quest with the same ending we got last time. Or we can say, any idea where I can look for someone to take care of you?
Well, Papa always told me about my cousin Vera. She lives in some big giant ship somewhere or something. Papa called the place Rivet City, but I don't know where it is.
I have to go now.
I wish you could stay here with me in Grayditch.
With that, he heads back to his home. But this time, he said he was gonna bury his dad. Let's see if he actually does it. Following him inside. Oh, look at that. He did bury his dad, and he put out the fire. Well, I would feel much better about him staying in this house, but we promised to find him a home. There are 3 other ways to finish this quest. If we're evil, and I mean truly evil, we can head to Paradise Falls to talk with Eulogy Jones.
Eulogy Just let me know if you need anything, and I'll do whatever I can to procure it.
I got a young boy for sale. Interested?
Kids are a bit tough in the resale, but they make good future breeders. I'll take him off your hands. How about 100 caps?
We can pass a barter check to say, make that 200 caps and you've got yourself a deal.
You drive a hard bargain, but it's still well worth it. Here you go.
Or we can pass a speech check to say, 100 caps? This kid'll make you 10 times that. 300, and you've got yourself a deal.
All right. He'll fetch a good price in the long run. Here you go.
Or we can just accept his offer. Fine, you've got a deal.
Good. Here's your caps. Pleasure doing business with you. Now all you gotta do is put this collar on him and tell him to run his ass on over here. We'll do the rest.
Don't mind
With that, he hands us a slave collar. Heading all the way back to Grayditch, we find Bryan in his dad's home.
I hope you found me a place to live.
Sure did. It's a beautiful place called Paradise Falls. Here, put this on.
What is this weird thing?
And he equips the slave collar. He has the same response to both of the two top options. So we can say, this is just something to remember me by. It'll lead you home.
I can't believe everything you've done for me. Most people would have kept on walking when I ran up to them, screaming like I did. I'll get my stuff together and move on out there right away. Come visit me sometime.
Or we can tell him the truth. It's a slave collar. I sold your dumbass for caps.
You son of a bitch! How could you do this to me? I lost everything and you sell me to slavers? Well, fuck you!
And with that, he walks off to Paradise Falls. And we complete the quest. If we return to Paradise Falls, we don't find him anywhere. He disappears from the game. He's not in the slave pens. We don't find him in any of the buildings. But Three Dog comes on the radio to chastise us. He says almost the same thing he said in the other ending, but then adds this.
But what did he do with the boy, Three Dog? Where's Bryan Wilkes now? I'll tell you where Bryan Wilkes is. He's at fucking Paradise Falls, that's where. Oh, you heard me right. 101. A little defenseless boy begged you for help, and what did you do? You sold him as a fucking slave. Shame, shame, shame on you.
But assuming we are not an absolute psychopath, we can try to find another home for poor young Bryan. Another option is to travel to Little Lamplight and to track down its mayor, Mayor McCready.
Watch it! So, what sort of trouble are you getting yourself into now?
I found an orphaned kid looking for a home. Would you take him in?
This ain't a hotel, Mungo. We don't let stupid farts in here for the hell of it.
For God's sake, stop acting like an asshole and let the kid in.
Trying to act like you're all tough, Mungo? Nice try, but we ain't got the room.
Forget it.
Already have.
All right, how many caps is it gonna take to change your mind?
Like I care about your stupid caps. I'm not some big, dumb Mungo. We don't let people just come in here when they feel like it. That ain't how it works, and it ain't gonna change. Guess you gotta find another home for little orphan asshole.
We can pass a speech check to say, look, this kid needs to be with people his own age. Give him a chance.
This is a bad idea. Fine, send him here. But if he smells bad or makes dumb jokes, I'm sticking him right back outside. We got enough of those here already.
Or we can pass a child at heart check to say, look, this kid's just like you. On his own, no parents. Give him a chance.
Killing me here, Mungo. Fine, you can send him here. But I'm not going to do any special favors for him or anything. He's got to pull his weight.
See you around, McCready.
Yeah, sure, whatever.
Then, heading back to Grayditch, we can tell Bryan the good news. I found a place with lots of kids your age. I'll tell you how to get there.
Well, it would have been nicer to live with Vera, but this will probably be pretty fun too. I can't believe everything you've done for me. Most people would have kept on walking when I ran up to them screaming like I did. I'll get my stuff together and move on out there right away. Come visit me sometime.
With that, we complete the quest, and Bryan heads off to Little Lamplight. No, he sits down on a couch for a bit. Well, I'm sure he'll get there eventually. Then, if we head to Little Lamplight, we find Bryan walking around the caverns.
It makes me feel safer knowing you're around.
So, how are you getting along now that you've left Grayditch behind?
I don't know. I mean, there are tons of other kids here like me, but they're all kind of weird. I don't really like sleeping in a huge cave. I keep having dreams about the ants. Oh well, at least I'm safer than I was in Grayditch. So I guess I have to thank you for that.
This is the neutral ending. We don't gain karma, we don't lose karma. Three Dog doesn't come on the radio to chastise us. In fact, he doesn't come on the radio at all. But there is a final solution. We can do as Bryan suggested, to try and track down his Aunt Vera at Rivet City. Heading to Rivet City, which we've explored already, we know Vera. She is in charge of the Weatherly Hotel, but she doesn't always spend time in the hotel. If we don't find her here, we can't talk with Mr. Buckingham about Bryan. Instead, we gotta track her down. We often find her walking around the marketplace.
Nice to see you again.
Vera, your nephew Bryan lost his folks and needs a place to live.
Poor dear. I know what it's like to be alone. I'd love to take him in. Don't worry. I have the means to keep him fed and healthy, but most importantly, safe.
I think Bryan would love his new home. I'll send him along shortly.
Oh, that's wonderful. If you ever wander back into Rivet City, why don't you check up on us? You're always welcome.
So Vera is his aunt, and we just informed her that Bryan's now an orphan. She didn't seem at all curious about her brother or sister, whom as a consequence must have died for him to become an orphan. At any rate, with her approval, we can head back to Grayditch, back to the Wilkes home, and check in with Bryan.
Holy moly! You actually came back like you said you would. Did you find me a home? I hope you found me a place to live.
I sure did, Bryan. Vera said she'd take you in.
You really found her? Oh, thank you so much. I can't believe everything you've done for me. Most people would have kept on walking when I ran up to them screaming like I did. I'll get my stuff together and move on out there right away. Come visit me sometime.
With that, he again takes his time heading to Rivet City. He sits down for a bit, but eventually he makes his way there. Heading to Rivet City ourselves, we find him hanging out in the Weatherly Hotel with his aunt.
Oh, hey there. Checking up on me or something?
So, how are you getting along now that you've left Grayditch behind?
Oh, Vera's the nicest lady ever. It's so cool that you brought me here. I mean, she makes me do stuff, like clean up her hotel and all that, but she really cares about me. Plus, I found some friends here in Rivet City too. All thanks to you.
I have to go now.
See you, lady.
And with that, we complete the quest those, we gain a healthy dose of karma, we find a new home for young Bryan Wilkes, and Three Dog hops on the radio to say this.
This, faithful listeners, is the story of a little boy. A little boy named Bryan Wilkes. You see, Bryan's from Grayditch, a small settlement that was recently overrun with overzealous giant ants. Bryan, sadly, was the sole survivor. That's where the kid from Vault 101 comes in, and where our story, thankfully, gets better. You see, not only did Mr. Vault 101 stop the ant problem, he also found little Bryan Wilkes a new home. So if you see Bryan and his new parents, wish them all good luck. Oh, and 101, nice work.
And that is the full story of Grayditch and the quest those. So which of these options do you think is the best? It may be tempting to agree with Dr. Lesko and say that the lives of Grayditch are expendable and that he should be the one to expend them for the sake of science. After all, if he's successful, he's right, he will solve the giant ant problem in the capital Wasteland and potentially save many lives. But the problem with arguments like these is we're betting a known quantity for an unknown quantity. Lesko knew how many people were alive now in Grayditch, but he didn't know, first, whether or not he would be successful, and second, how many lives he would save if he was successful. That's a bad gamble. It's one thing if he was gambling his own life on his own genius, but he's not doing just that. He also took it into his own hands to gamble the lives of everyone else in Grayditch. I think that makes Dr. Lesko a pretty awful person, but character judgments aside, he was also practicing bad science. And he knew he was practicing bad science. He was more concerned with getting results, finding success as fast as possible, than he was with carefully and slowly, methodically, testing all possible variables using a real lab, making sure all safety precautions were in place before injecting FEV of all things into an ant queen. And I think his experiment was so rushed because he didn't have altruistic motives. He wasn't just doing this for the good of mankind. As we read in his terminal, he had something to prove. We get the impression that he had run across people who had doubted him. "Soon I will prove to everyone," he says in his terminal. And it appears that he had a bit of an obsession with ants themselves. Saving lives in the capital Wasteland by making ants smaller was a nice side effect of his experiment. But he was more concerned with the deaths of ants. He was trying to make them smaller so fewer people would be forced to kill giant ants in order to survive. He was saddened by, quote, the destruction of these misunderstood beings. So I think Dr. Lesko's experiment was unethical, not just for the way he did it and how callously he regarded human life as if it were an obstacle in the way of progress, but also because FEV is just bad. Can we agree that in the Fallout universe, no good thing comes from the forced evolutionary virus? Therefore, I think the most ethical choice here is to not only kill the ant queen, but to also destroy the mutagen sample. It's bad enough that President Eden has a sample. The last thing we need is some mad scientist trope running around the bowels of a subway station injecting ants with FEV. I don't necessarily think he needs to die. I am uncomfortable with the idea of murdering Dr. Lesko over this, as unethical as I think he is. But he certainly shouldn't be allowed to continue to experiment with FEV. As for Bryan Wilkes, well, I think we should make whatever choice makes him most happy. And clearly that choice is to send him to his Aunt Vera Weatherly at Rivet City. I think it's obvious that selling him into child slavery is a pretty bad option. It's good to have a parent at that age, a strong role model for how an adult should act, and Vera seems to be a decent person, so I think it's probably better for the young boy to have a parental figure rather than to not have one. So Rivet City, I think, is a better choice compared to Little Lamplight. But those are just my thoughts. What are your thoughts on this quest? How did you resolve both issues? Let me know in the comments section below. I publish many videos each and every week on my channel, so if you don't want to miss the next one, be sure to subscribe and to click that bell notification button. If you have and you feel like you're still missing out on YouTube notifications, consider following me on Twitter at Oxhorn. I update Twitter manually with every new piece of content that I publish. I've got a brand new shirt in the shop, Lion's Pride. The Brotherhood does its best, but sometimes they need a little something special. That's where Lion's Pride comes in. This design comes on shirts in a variety of men's, women's, and children's sizes, and in a wide array of colors. You can find it on lots of other products too, like smartphone cases, posters, mugs, stickers, prints, etc. So if interested, you can find a link to my shop in the description below, or you can click here. If you like what I do and you want to support me in a more personal way, consider becoming a patron on Patreon or a member here on YouTube. Patreon patrons get access to exclusive channels on my Discord server, and YouTube members gain access to unique ox emojis they can use during my live streams, and they get little badge icons next to their names when commenting in the YouTube comment section. But more than anything, ladies and gentlemen, I'm just so glad you're here watching this video with me today. Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you soon with more brand new videos.